It is the 200 level. Mike Carpenter in the basement studio on a Wednesday afternoon, picking up the pieces from a very disappointing football game on Saturday. You may have noticed I dropped a few more choice words. I was angry. I was thinking about that, reflecting on whether or not I should be using language like that. And I do try to use it sparingly and not, what would be the word? Just for the sake of using it or to excess. But I was genuinely ticked, so I don't regret what I said. I think I could, as a podcaster, try to find maybe more creative ways to express that frustration. But the reason I went live on Saturday in the fourth quarter when things were really getting away from Illinois was because it was clear to anyone watching that game that something larger was amiss. It's not just going on the road and losing. That we can all stomach. And I think part of the reason the Bret Bielema era has been so much more fun than any other era since Makovic is that you have been competitive and that you feel like you're in games until the very end, with a few exceptions. But the three losses this year, and granted, two of them to 1 and 2, so I still don't feel all that bad about those. But the three games you've lost, you haven't really given yourselves any chance to win them based on mostly the performance of your defense. Well, let's amend that a little bit. Everybody was at fault. Indiana. The offense could have done better against Ohio State, but, what are you going to do? I think that that's a very good defense over there. But I think the Washington game really resonated with us in the worst way possible because it felt like a genuine opportunity to get a quality win. It felt gettable. And yet, for some reason, you didn't give yourself any chance whatsoever, even after a bye week. I mean, that to me was what was so frustrating about that. All this time to prepare and come up with a plan to at least be serviceable on that side of the ball. And instead, you gave up touchdowns on 6 of their 7 possessions. And the one time that you gave up a punt, or forced a punt, I should say, was after a drop pass. So, no, I don't regret the language I said. I would be lying if I came on here apologize. I don't feel bad about that. And I was thinking, well, why was I so angry about that? And it occurred to me that I did not enter this season saying college football player for bust. I was very clear back in August that was not an expectation of mine. But it could happen if everything fell right. And we dare to dream a little bit. And I think the first podcast back in August, well, imagine, early December, Friday or Saturday evening in Champaign, getting to your tailgate lot, 30 degrees outside. You look over at Memorial Stadium, the sun is setting, and realize, oh my God, we're about to host an opening round college football playoff game. Now, admittedly, it was a bit of a dream. And I would say 15, 20% chance of that happening. But there was a chance. The season starts. You find out your quarterback is, in fact, very freaking good. And that you have enough on 2 sides of the ball, or 2 units, to have maybe made a push. But you won't sniff it because of one of your 3 units. You don't need to make a long list as to why Illinois is 5-3. Well, don't overthink it. You don't need to make a long list as to why Illinois is not going to sniff a college football playoff. Don't overanalyze it. It's the defense. They're bad. We'll get into objectively how bad they are in a bit. And I'm not going to use this whole podcast to crap on them. But it's frustrating because there were other elements of this team that were ready to make that jump, potentially. And one unit isn't just holding you back. It is eliminating any chance you have of sniffing it in the first place. It didn't have to be this way. We can play, well, who could they have hired instead? I don't want to do an I told you so thing, but I will. Just give me 30 seconds to do that, okay? 30 seconds. In 2023, when that season ended, I said, you need to move on from Aaron Henry. I said that after the Northwestern debacle at home. You remember how many late touchdowns and scores they gave up. I know the special teams didn't help, but you scored a bunch of points in that game, and the defense could not stop freaking Northwestern, okay? I said, if you're serious, you move on. It didn't work. It's okay. Go get a guy. It bothered me to my core that Bret Bielema talked about Well, he's going to grow into the role. He's learning on the job. And Aaron Henry said as much himself. And I don't want to hear that crap. You are a Power 4 football program. You should not have a coordinator in a position to be learning on the job. He should be ready to go from the start. Well, that wasn't the case. So that's the only I told you so I'm going to do for that. 2023, I said get rid of him at the end of the year. They didn't. He had a better year in 2024. And the defense actually had 3 objectively very good games against Kansas, Michigan, South Carolina. But there are other games where the cracks showed. And this year, the dam has just burst open, and they're terrible. They're terrible. So that was my frustration on Saturday, was a multitude of factors, not the least of which was the fact that the defense is the main culprit as to why you will not have any college football playoff conversations. And did I expect that? Did I expect to have those conversations in November? I didn't. But I wanted to get to a place where if they were to win out, you'd have a chance. And the ways in which you've lost these 3 games eliminate that. Not that you'd have a chance if they had been close necessarily. I mean, 9-3 with close losses in all 3 probably still would not have done it because USC is not doing you any favors, and neither is Duke as far as winning all the games they should. But it at least would have added a little bit more intrigue to a November that doesn't really have anything in the way of exciting matchups. It just doesn't. So what we're going to talk about today, is there a path forward for this defense? Can this team win even if the defense does not improve? And if they do go, let's say 9-3, how do we feel about this season? You know, what would you need to see in the offseason in order for you to feel like, hey, you know, this is actually overall a positive outcome for this team? Because I think there are 2 parallel tracks here. It's what happens these 4 games, and it's what happens in the immediate aftermath of the season. And after the break here, I'm going to get into what should happen when this regular season is over. But before I get too far ahead of myself, I got to remind you that the 200 level is brought to you by Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, Steak, Seafood, and Spirits, my favorite restaurant in the area. Appreciate them being sponsors for the 2nd year with the 200 level. You can see my picture as you go right in. We're right behind there. Me, Lon, Trevor, and Harry at the end of our Tan Carp run. We're right behind the host stand. While you're there, best old-fashioned in town. Get a bone-in steak, however you want to cook. I get medium. I know a lot of people love the medium rare. Maybe you're one of those just red meat aficionados and you want that thing rare. And I would actually trust Hamilton Walkers with a rare cut of meat because this kitchen, it's all scratch. Amazing chefs that work at this place because everything I've ever gotten there is as good as any other place in Champaign. I mean, to give you an example, steak fries. Anyone can do steak fries, but it is the Hamilton Walker steak fry that it just has this extra crisp to it that goes so perfectly with a bone-in steak that I'm actually just kind of having a Pavlovian dog response mentioning it. Hamilton Walkers, downtown Champaign. Also, State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728 and join their maintenance program. So my wife and I have been doing this for a few years now. Maintenance program gets you AC check in the spring, furnace check in the fall, really affordable rate. And then when you're part of that, no overtime or weekend fees in case something does happen. Guaranteed same-day service. There's a reason why Dogtown has developed such a good reputation. We feel lucky to be working with them. Of course, having them as a sponsor, but being able to see them at work and how efficient they are with it and how much they've helped us out, I can speak from experience. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing is your home's best friend. 217-841-4728. And finally, got to thank Owen Builders LLC, online at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. Appreciate Luke. He was in the podcast on Saturday when we were fuming, getting that cathartic anger out. But he is a big Illini fan. And also what they do at Owen Builders is a variety of home improvement projects, which you can check out a gallery of what some of those are. Get a free quote while you're there at owenbuildersllc.com. Champagne Showers Podcast Network. Appreciate them. Appreciate you, listeners, viewers. I know we got a few joining us here across the platforms on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Hello to all of you. And if you got anything to say, throw it in the comments section. I know we got a few in there. I mentioned that something needs to happen at the end of the season, and I'm not even going to qualify this statement with, well, that's subject to change. No, there's no subject to change. Aaron Henry can't be the defensive coordinator going forward. For my mind, professionally speaking, he's a dead man walking in that position. Okay, this is lame duck status. There is nothing that can be done in these last 4 games that would change my mind about that. I don't think we'll run into that issue where all of a sudden the defense turns the corner and they play well in 4 straight games, even against not so great offenses. I don't foresee that happening. So, if you're worried about, oh God, what if it's a mirage? I don't foresee that happening. But if it did, if theoretically they happen to play well in the last 4 games, I don't care. It's Tommy Lee Jones in The Fugitive. I didn't kill my wife. I don't care. I don't care if they play well the last 4 games of the year. It's not good enough. Look at the cutthroat nature of college football. Head coaches being fired mid-season so they can get a jump on who their next guy is going to be. Well, we don't really have the same precedent for coordinators. But if such a thing existed, like if coordinators were dropping like flies, like head coaches seem to be, Aaron Henry would be on the chopping block right now after what we've seen in these first 9 games, or 8 games, excuse me. Okay, well, fine, he's not. But pay close attention to what Bielema said on Monday. I'm paraphrasing some of these, but you can go back and listen to the press conference. He essentially said, I had a meeting with the defensive staff 2 hours long on Monday morning, giving them essentially a game plan. He said, my ideas. Game plan. Call sheet. I don't know. Bret Bielema has effectively neutered Aaron Henry's play calling responsibilities, is what I'm imagining happened at the Smith Performance Center. And here's the thing. I hope that's what happened. It's unfortunate that you would find yourself in that position, but you are at a point where there is no other choice. Okay, so what is Aaron Henry going to do now? Well, he's effectively just going to look at the sheet and probably say, if it's 2nd and long, do this, 3rd and long, do that. God forbid the 3rd and longs. I already am gagging in my mouth thinking about what Ethan Kaliak-Manis might do on a few of these 3rd and longs against this defense. But you have effectively neutered your defensive coordinator in what you've said. And he's done it respectfully, Bret Bielema. He's not said anything that bad other than, well, the defense isn't good enough. I am going to get more involved. Okay, fine. But read between the lines. It's pretty clear that he's saying, yeah, I got to take it over. Okay, well, when you've reached that point, it's over. So what I mean by nothing could change my mind in these last 4 games, it's the fact that there's no going back at a certain point. There's no polishing this turd and saying, well, they only gave up 27 to Rutgers, and they only gave up 24 to Maryland, and it's over. Because there is an unspoken thing, I would assume, going on at the Smith Performance Center. I don't talk to Harry about this, and he says there's a very business-like approach when you're players and coaches. And you tend to keep maybe your disgruntled feelings about the other side of the ball or certain coaches to yourself. You're just pulling your own weight. You're focusing on what you need to do individually to help your unit and then your team. So I understand that tunnel vision, but I would have to think that there is at least an understanding over there that, oh boy, Coach Henry, he's in trouble. Now, maybe that manifests in a very inspired performance from the defense against Rutgers. And you know what's funny? I could actually see it. They're still going to give up points, and they're still going to give up yards, but I could actually see on Saturday, I think that Illinois could win by 2-3 scores here, which might sound ludicrous on its face after how bad things look. But to me, there's a lot of things at play here, which suggests to me that Illinois will cover the spread, which is right now, I think, 12.5. Crazy, I know. But I don't think we're going to be leaving that stadium on Saturday saying, there we go. Aaron Henry has unlocked the key. Because even if this defense does turn things around, based on what Bret Bielema has said, it is only because he got more involved with it. This was not from the brain of Aaron Henry. If we do see improvement, it was, here's the game plan. Potentially, here's the call sheet, and go make the calls because I got more important things to do. I'm the head coach. So at that point, it is over. And there's no other choice but to get a new defensive coordinator next year. And I bandied about the idea that, well, maybe you say, hey, Aaron, like, listen, I respect what you are as a position coach. How about secondary coach? Because if Corey Parker stays or goes, whatever. I mean, it's year 2 for him, and the secondary stinks. And it's not the only unit that stinks, but que sera, sera. So let's say that were the case. Okay, fine. I guess I could imagine a scenario in which Aaron Henry comes back as secondary coach. But at that point, why? Let's stop. We don't need to go half measures here. This might be a defense in need of a complete overhaul. And you might keep Jameson because of his ability to develop nose tackles. And I would understand that to an extent. And Archie McDaniel has a good reputation. But right now, there is a toxification going on that side of the ball. Whatever stinks at the top is rotting down to the rest of it. Each and every position group is playing under what they should be playing. And the coaches are probably looking at each other like, well, how did this get so bad so quick? I don't know, guys. And the fans don't know. We aren't in the meetings. We aren't in the practices. How did it get this bad? You tell us. And the problem is they don't have answers. We saw this on Monday, and Aaron Henry comes out and he says, essentially from the jump, let's address the elephant in the room. We are not playing well right now. And I appreciate the accountability. And I do think he is a genuinely, probably really good guy. By every account, a good guy. And that does mean something. But again, we're talking a cutthroat college football landscape, more cutthroat than ever. And if you are a big boy Power 4 program like I know Bielema wants to be, then this cannot stand. I think what we saw Monday and the things that Bret Bielema said was essentially, I see the same things you do. It's unacceptable. I'm taking it over. We're going to try to patch this dam until the end of the year, and we will make changes. The way he said things and what he said has me thinking, boy, it would be shocking if Aaron Henry comes back. So it's so weird. I'll see just kind of as a lurker on message boards, people say, well, listen, guys, they're 5-3, and if the defense plays one of the last 4 games, stop. Even if they do, I don't care. I don't care. You would not be able to go into any season now reliant on Aaron Henry as a coordinator. We are at a point where his name will get mentioned along the likes of, remember Mike Schultz? West Coast offense with Juice Williams running quarterback? Yeah, Juice was not a West Coast quarterback. Juice was a big-armed, running quarterback. Hey, Juice, how about a bunch of underneath drag routes? Based on timing. And Juice is like, the hell? I'm a read option quarterback here. Didn't go well in 2009. Mike Schultz, just terrible hire from Ron Zook. Go to the Beatty Gonzalez co-coordinator thing. All right, you get the first and second down, I'll get the third down. Didn't work out so well. Too bad Matt Campbell didn't come here, but I think things are going pretty well for him. You join a long list of bad coordinators whose names we remember, and for not the right reasons. It's unfortunate, but I want to be careful here because while I appreciate Bret Bielema acknowledging that it's unacceptable, it doesn't excuse the fact that he hired Aaron Henry in the first place. Revisionist history, hindsight 2020, whatever you want to say. Back in 2022, Ryan Walters accepts the Purdue job in December. I remember this unfolding, and I'm texting Trevor and Isaac thinking, of course, we get a coordinator, and then Purdue decides, well, let's get the hot young coordinator instead of a head coach. Of course it would happen to us. Ryan Walters leaves. But then the question is, and people are kind of speculating, well, who's going to get promoted, right? And why not Kevin Kane, who's an associate head coach, I want to say at SMU, had a lot more bona fides, or bona fides, however they say it. But no, it was Aaron Henry. Now, I came on this podcast saying, well, that's an inspired hire, because if he was the secondary coach and he had all these secondary players and he's a young guy, there's a risk there, but I could see this potentially paying off. And then 2 years into the Bielema experiment, you think, I'll trust him based on the improvement we've already seen, that this guy knows how to identify talent, because he does have quite the Rolodex with coordinators. If he's not going to go so much as go out and sniff for an outside coordinator, maybe he knows something, because he could. Well, no, didn't work. 2023 worked terribly with the excuse, the built-in excuse. There were enough new pieces on the defense. This is how it's going to be. Okay, well, that can apply to an extent, but the fact is, despite a nice little mid-season recovery, in the games, specifically at Maryland, for example. In November, they were bad again. And I remember people after we gave up, I think, 13 points at Iowa said, hey, they only gave up 13. It's like, yeah, but Iowa's averaging 6. So I'm not going to give them a cookie for, well, you held them to 13. It's all relative. That's like 40 points when Deacon Hill, who looks like a Roblox character, is the quarterback for Iowa. I'm not going to award a medal for that. And then the Northwestern game happens after that. Don't even make a bowl. Why? Oh, right, defense. Okay. Last year, you overcome that. And to Aaron Henry's credit, he did have good games mixed in there. So last year was not a D- defense. It was probably a B- if you think about it, which was good enough given that schedule and some late game heroics from Luke Altmaier to win 10 games. But the defense did help you out in a few of those. So I enter this year, and shame on me, thinking, well, maybe there's been growth there. And with all these guys coming back, even if Aaron Henry's not a great coordinator, there's a decent chance he's not a bad one. And that with that continuity on the staff and with his players, he might even tap into something a little bit better. Not that this is the end-all be-all, but as an anecdotal example, on College Football 26, Illinois has, I think 86 is the rating for the defense. It's rated higher than the offense. And I remember in August thinking, man, with all the guys on defense, I like Luke. I like the running game. I think the idea finally for Bret Bielema is that we're going to be a running team with a good defense. And when it comes down to it, we have a good quarterback that can go win games if he gets called into action. There's no way in hell that Bret Bielema will enter this year saying, you know what, I want the offense to set a bunch of gaudy records, which they're kind of doing in some ways. I want them to set a bunch of records, and we just outscore people. There's no way he thought that. And think about all the times early on, especially, where Bielema was telling Lunny, hey, man, we got to establish the run. Okay, well, Lunny was trying that, wasn't working. Bart Miller, we can get to that in the offseason, but another thing to consider. And I'm thinking, man, this template that I know Bret Bielema probably wanted to instill, and the one that I thought this team would instill too, it ain't happening. Why? Well, the defense isn't really allowing that to happen. So you've had this identity shift out of necessity. And the Duke game, the turnovers, they were takeaways. They were good plays. They actually made plays in that game. Imagine that. Not dropping interceptions right in their breadbasket and actually getting to the quarterback and recovering fumbles when it's right freaking in front of them. There was that. And then the Western Michigan game was ho-hum, but you did shut them out, didn't you? Did you shut them out? And then from there, we've just been, listen, I'm just going to throw the totals out there. Not that you don't already kind of know this, but 63, 32, 27, 34, 42. What is that in Big Ten play? God, I'm sorry. This is not going to be compelling radio or podcasting, but if I just do that quick average through these games of Big Ten play, 63, all right, hold on. 63 plus 32 plus 27 plus 34 plus 42 divided by 5. You are giving up an average of, hold on. Well, I just screwed that up because I forgot the order of operations here. But as I'm eyeballing this, you're giving up over 40 a game. And even if you take out the outlier of the Indiana game, which I don't know why you would, but sure, you can take that out, you're giving up somewhere in the mid-30s. So what's the point? I said that Saturday, but what's the point? Why are we even there's no discussion to be had. This thing's over. So now it's about fixing this enough to win the remaining games, all of which, frankly, you should. And what happens when you lose a game like Washington in the manner in which you lose it is it does add a little bit of urgency, even from a fan's perspective, guys, you got to show me something. And they did that in the USC game after still the lowest point of the year. 63-10. Okay, they showed us something. Purdue wasn't pretty, but you got the job done on the road by 16 points. So, okay, fine. And then it's not like effort was the question against Ohio State, a team that will likely be in the national championship. Okay, but the Washington game sat so badly because of the fact that they felt like a peer and you felt outclassed. And it was the defense. Now, I'm going to get off this defense thing in a bit, but it's problematic. There is a stat, defensive stop rate. And what defensive stop rate measures is how often a defense forces either a turnover on downs, a turnover, or a punt. Essentially, any possession that does not end in an offensive score. Illinois, out of 136 FBS teams, ranks 110. They are worse than the likes of Florida International and Coastal Carolina and Marshall. They are 2 spots ahead of UCLA, 3 ahead of Michigan State, 4 ahead of Purdue. And then, fortunately for us, Rutgers is all the way down at 125. But 53.5%, and boy, doesn't it seem like a lot of those stops were against the Western Michigans of the world. Or the fact that you point to the Ohio State game as one of your better defensive efforts. And it was statistically. This thing is a sieve. It can't stop anything. So that one, I was thinking about this on Saturday. I don't know if I said this on the podcast or not. I'm watching the game, and it is becoming clear that the defense has no interest in stopping anybody. And I text Trevor and Isaac, and I'm texting my dad too. And I say, I'm not even kidding. When the defense is back on the field, I'm doing chores. I can't watch this. I can't watch a bunch of guys flailing around, not tackling, not being anywhere near wide open receivers, seeing 3 men sent after a quarterback that has running ability and giving him 12 seconds in the pocket to just pick us apart and look like a 19-year-old phenom as opposed to the 19-year-old, he can make mistakes quarterback at Michigan. Why? Because they actually went after him. It was just maddening to see a game plan that clearly wasn't working from the start. There was no shift. Or if there was, the players were already checked out enough because they came in with such a crap game plan anyways. How can you trust your coach after that? I couldn't watch the defense at a certain point. I was getting angry. So I start doing chores. One defensive possession, I'm dry swiffing because we have a fluffy dog and her fur is all over the place. I'm dry swiffing as we actually force a 3 and out. I'm thinking I've unlocked it. I claim to not be superstitious, but that's kind of BS. I am a little bit. So great. I'm going to find a new task for each defensive possession. And then that didn't really fix anything. That was the one punt that you had. That was the one defensive stop. Other than the end of the game, if you were to call it that, but I don't know if that really qualifies. And I'm already looking ahead to Saturday and thinking, I'm looking forward to seeing how this team responds as a whole. And I think they will, because there's no other choice. But I'm also thinking to myself, oh God, when the defense is on the field, I'm just like, I am too surly about it. I'm not looking forward to watching that defense. And that's half the game. So, I think about the times during the basketball season last year where I got frustrated because we're giving up 100 points a game. And that there was just no perceivable, at least, change or effort to change what clearly was not working. And that even if they had, you didn't necessarily have the personnel to have an effective defense anyway. So I think ultimately you're going to see a defense look more inspired, and they're going to look like they're flying around a little bit more. And maybe that will manifest itself in a performance where Rutgers gets 27 instead of 42. But you know what this could also be? It could also be a replay of the John Paddock game against Indiana, where it's just back and forth, and you win by the hairs of your chinny chin chin. And as much as I like Barry Lunny, a lot, I do, I still think his offense is better when it's a game in the 20s or low 30s. When you start getting things into the upper 30s and 40s, bets are off. And even a great offense, which Illinois can be, can struggle when they feel like they got to pitch a perfect game. So I'm not that leery about Rutgers because I do think there's a bounce back thing that is kind of built into college football, and that it was such a frustrating loss that this team can channel it in a positive way. But when I see this team 110th in the FBS out of 136 in stopping the opposing offense, that tracks. Because doesn't it feel that way? Doesn't it feel like they're one of the worst? And as far as Power 4 teams, the only ones beneath them are UCLA, Michigan State, Purdue, NC State, Virginia Tech, Rutgers, Baylor, Oklahoma State. It's Boston College ACC, yeah, and Arkansas. I think there's 8 Power 4 teams beneath you. So this is not a question about are you just below average? No, you're objectively bad. Furthermore, to look at some of these here, in the Big Ten, you are 16th out of 18 teams in total defense. Purdue and Rutgers are the only teams beneath you. That is giving up 381 yards a game. Rutgers, fortunately for you, giving up 425. And it's not like they played a bunch of great offenses either. So if Aaron Henry has any sort of argument, it's the fact that you have played Indiana and you have played Ohio State and you have played a good Washington team, but we've seen Washington's offense struggle. It's the fact that even a Purdue offense got over 400 yards against you and would have had more if they didn't have wide receivers with freaking WD-40 on their hands. Points per game, Illinois, not 16th, but they are 18, 17, 16, 14th in the Big Ten. Only Purdue, Rutgers, UCLA, and Michigan State are beneath them. You are damn lucky you have Luke Altmaier in this offense. And, Aaron Henry acknowledged the fact that, it's unfair to the offense what's happening. Bret Bielema acknowledged this fact. He said, and I'm paraphrasing here, on Monday, we have an offense putting up great numbers and setting records, and we aren't helping them. One side of the ball is letting them down. And that has to have an effect on the overall team morale. Yeah, I know. Again, back to what Harry Black always told me. Well, listen, you just kind of focus on what you do. But, man, at a certain point, it would start at least subconsciously becoming a thing, I would think. Man, it's just unfortunate. It's just unfortunate because it is an indictment of Bielema, and he's a coach that has done so much good. And just to qualify this much, you're 5-3. With a very good chance of 8 or 9 wins. I am still, despite everything I've said on this podcast, very encouraged by what he's done and still optimistic for what lay ahead. I do think he is adaptable. I think Barry Lunny is a great example of that because that doesn't look like a Wisconsin Bret Bielema offense. It's modern. There is within Bret Bielema an ability to adapt to the game and the NIL era for sure. He's done great with many of those aspects of it. I'm also okay winning 8-9 games a year. Are you kidding me? Like, if that's what ultimately happens this year, darn the luck. I mean, I'm not going to be heartbroken about that. I will be overall happy and excited again for next year with all the changes and everything, roster, new quarterback, probably new coaches. But that's really good and should be celebrated. But on the other hand, it is okay as a fan to look at an individual season and a possible window of opportunity a little bit differently. It is okay to match your expectations with what they had themselves. And that was trying to get in the college football playoff. And before the month of October was done, that dream was over because of the defense. So yes, my reaction Saturday, all the foaming at the mouth vitriol, was because I hate the fact that you didn't even give yourselves a chance and that this could have been avoided. You had Jim Leonard as an analyst in 2023. To what? Help Aaron Henry along? Again, this idea of this being an apprenticeship, my biggest bugaboo with Bret Bielema, now that I think about it, it probably has been and will end up being the Aaron Henry situation. It probably is. So if you're listening to this and thinking, man, does Carp have a bone to pick? I guess I do. I think that this has been probably simmering. But then you see like, oh, well, maybe it could work. And then when it all came crashing down and you realize, no, it ain't going to work, you do start thinking, and what is this, the grief process? It sounds like a little bit convoluted, I know, but then you start thinking about, well, what could have been a different course of action? And it's really simple, everybody. In 2023, before that season started, you could have went out and got a proven defensive coordinator. You were in a position to do so. Coming off the year that you had in 2022, given Bret Bielema's connections, there was no reason to just say, okay, boy wonder, here's the DC job. There's no doubt that a subjective liking of Aaron Henry led to Bret Bielema hiring him instead of looking elsewhere. There's no doubt about that. And that bit this team. It kept 2023 from making a bowl more than anything else on that team. The defense kept that team from making a bowl. 2024, I don't know. I mean, do you flip any games because of the defense? No, not necessarily. So, you somehow skated through 13 games without it biting you. But the sample size is enough to suggest that, yes, the defense has cost you what would be 4 bowl games in a row, because I still think going to make one this year. If you lose all 4, boy, oh boy, these podcasts are going to get really dark really quick. But yeah, and it just didn't have to be that way. So that bums you out. Now, the good news is, whereas pre-NIL era, these sort of mistakes could take a long time to build out of, that's not so much the case anymore. And there's a lot of big money flying over there at that football facility to bring in guys and probably to afford buyouts, so I can't imagine it'd be a big buyout for Aaron Henry. I can't imagine he's one of the higher paid defensive coordinators, but I guess I'd have to look that up. But you can change your fortunes more quickly. And I think by making the change, it does show that Bret Bielema understands that this is not something you can play around with. And man, darn it, man. The fact that the Monday press conference was essentially devoted to that. I thought the journalists there were asking the right questions. I thought Bielema handled it well. I thought Aaron Henry handled it well. Barry Lunny's just sitting there like, man, I'm doing my job. I don't know. What do you want from me? And I thought it was very telling when on Jay Lehman's appearance with Jeremy Werner, and I would encourage you to watch it if you haven't. You see the anguish and the confusion and the range of emotions that Jay, a former Illini, a local guy who bleeds orange and blue, who knows defense, had when he was watching that game Saturday. And for him to come out and say verbatim, the defense is broken, and then to later follow it up with, I don't know how you fix it. I mean, it's not an easy fix. If that was disconcerting. Because there wasn't, well, I know it was 42 points, but really the tape shows this. No, Jay Lehman had a visceral reaction to it, as so many of us did. And I thought, man, I know I'm hot-headed, but I really felt like my disdain for what I was seeing was legit. It was valid. And then I hear him talk and how angry. I say angry. I mean, Jay's a nice guy, so like his anger is another man's disgruntled. Like that really hit home with me, and thought, damn, man, this is bad. Now, all that said, you got games to win. Parallel tracks here. You got to make a change in defense, and I don't care what happens. It has to happen. This is not an Aaron Henry training camp. That's over. So here's what it's about: winning games. That's it. My focus as a fan is simply, okay, guys, win as many games as you can, period. Which sounds simplistic and, well, duh, really? You want them to win games? Yes, I want them to win as many games as possible because there is momentum to carry over. There is momentum to be had. A win in the Big Ten is still a win in the Big Ten, regardless of if the opponents aren't great. Rutgers, Maryland, Wisconsin, Northwestern, none of them are great. Northwestern is probably the best of the bunch right now. But check this out. K Ford ratings, so Kelly Ford ratings, they do the sort of matchup by matchup predictive thing. They have you 79% chance to beat Rutgers, 76 to beat Maryland, 75 to win on the road at Wisconsin, and 76 to beat Northwestern at home. To me, it's very simple. Win out. Go 9-3, 2 years in a row with Luke Altmaier. To me, that is pretty awesome. And I will be happy after each one of those wins, regardless of if they're quality opponents, because by beating the teams you should, it tells me that, yes, you have raised the floor. No, you're not in danger of falling back down to the 5-7 abyss that has befell us so many times after good seasons. You aren't in danger of that if you take care of business. So I want this team to just be laser freaking focused. And it's such a great opportunity. Home game, bye week. Home game, road game, home game. When your road game is at a Wisconsin team that I guess showed signs of life at Oregon, and that was one of their better performances, but will be basically zombies by the time you play them and will be in front of an empty Camp Randall in late November. I mean, guys, I don't care what happened at Washington. These still are games that you need to win. Now, given the defense, a slip-up seems possible or likely. I think a lot of you might say likely. How many of us right now would go to the bank and say Illinois is going 9-3? Not even I would. I worry for a slip-up. And it could happen Saturday. Oddly enough, I don't think it will. But I will say, though, I think it's fair as a fan to say win out. Win out. You didn't make the college football playoff. You lost to 3 good teams. The Washington game and the Indiana game, in each of their own ways, were inexcusable. Okay. But you beat USC. You beat Duke. You beat the teams you should. You're Illinois football. 2 straight 9-win seasons. Well, 10 and then 9 and see what happens at the bowl game. Nothing to sneeze at. Punch your ticket to the Music City Bowl. Travel down there 5 hours away. Spend New Year's in Nashville. Guys, I'll take that. I will take it and be happy. Will they beat Rutgers? Let's get the prediction out of the way. Yes, I think they will. I was looking at the SP Plus rankings. So this is what Bill Connolly does for ESPN. And right now he has Illinois as the 31st best team in the country. He has Rutgers at 65. He does a weekly kind of prediction based on his SP rankings. And for Illinois and Rutgers, he has Illinois with a 77% chance to win. 13.5-point favorites, I guess, is one spread that he saw. He predicts Illinois to win 37-25, and I think 38-27. How you hold them to 2 field goals, like the 3 touchdown, 2 field goal thing, that'll be a wait and see thing, I guess. But I think 38-27 tracks. It seems right. Weather is not going to be an issue. It'll be no wind, no rain, maybe not that sunny, but, low 50s during the game. I mean, that's fine. That's not going to affect the performance of the teams out there. So there's no weird variables here. To me, it is a Rutgers team that, for whatever reason, were very emotional after beating Purdue last week. Very, very emotional. I'm thinking, okay, well, good for you guys. Fine. But I just thought it was kind of a puzzling reaction. And I thought, well, if that was emotional for them, I kind of like that. There's certain narratives I tend to go with. One is teams after an emotional win often have the hangover game. And I don't know why Rutgers viewed this Purdue game as such a big deal, but they did. I mean, when you saw Greg Schiano afterwards and the way the players were reacting, it meant a lot to them. Okay, fine, good. I'm glad it wasn't just a ho-hum business effort for them. They got to win, an emotional win. Thanks in part to Ryan Brown being a complete doofus with the ball. Okay, fine. And now they come in here feeling good about themselves. That's not a question. But yeah, you rarely get 2 great performances in a row, and they felt like that was one of their better ones. Maybe, I can't tell. But on the flip side is the bounce back game narrative. And you are healthy. You late in the year, you're still healthy. So you got that going for you. You got embarrassed on the road. You're facing a team that does not have near the athletes of Washington. And you know what the problem with that Washington game is? Your offense was hanging. Your offense looked as good as theirs in parts of that game. But, Washington had a serviceable defense. Not great, but serviceable. And you didn't. So Washington could be a very good team. I don't think we're that far from being a very good team if the defense just figured their stuff out. So that leads me to believe, okay, if the defense was a 2 out of 10 against Washington, and that might be being generous, if you could give me a 5 out of 10 That might be a bit generous. 4 out of 10. Just be below average the rest of the year. There's nothing to say that Illinois can't win out, given the strength of their offense and given the relative lack of strength of the opposing offenses. But that uncertainty stems with one side of the ball. One and only one. Now, Illinois wins 38-27. My prediction there. Let's just broach real quick. What if they don't? What if they lose? I would hate to see that happen. And the way that I view this isn't all that dissimilar from when Michigan State came to town last year. 2 straight losses. You lost big time on the road to Oregon. And then you came back, lose to Minnesota. You have a bye week then. You're still at home. So you come back out against a Michigan State team that, I don't want to say they were upstart, but they had a talented young quarterback. They had an offense that could score a little bit last year. Not so much this year because Charles has kind of regressed. And you took care of business to the tune of a 3-score win. Now, given the fact the defense has regressed so much, I can't guarantee you a 3-score win. I don't foresee that because I just think you give up too many points. But if you were to lose this game, going into a bye week, and then you got 2 mid to late November games at home, and man, dude, talk about momentum being lost. I don't want to broach that. I don't think we will. But it's not out of the realm of possibility. The team still has to play. I hope that Barry Lunny's just in screw it mode. All right, damn it. Fine. We'll score 50 points a game. I wouldn't be surprised if in their meetings this week he's being honest with the guys. I don't care what they do on that. What we're doing is we're scoring 50 a game. And we can do it against all these fools. Let's do it. Luke, this is your final 4-game stretch. Go out there, ball out. Offensive line, do your freaking job. Keep him upright. Create some running lanes. But we are just enough of this ball control crap. We're just going high flying. We're scoring. Okay, cool. I'm game for that. That'd make it a fun November. And they're capable. They are capable of potentially doing that. So, okay, fine. Defensively, just don't suck. God. I got a few comments here before we start wrapping things up. From Joe, watch Iowa make the playoff. It could happen. And what's so weird, Iowa lost at Rutgers. Now, at Rutgers is a different beast than Rutgers on the road. That was early in the year. Iowa's figured a lot of things out. But you did see that Rutgers has the ability to score. That has not been their problem this year. From Anthony, 9-3 sounds unbelievably great, but still stings for some reason. I think, Anthony, if you were to replay this season and the 3 losses to this point were close, that would sting in a different way. It would sting in, oh, man, it would hurt maybe more. The sting that you're referring to is the fact that the 3 losses were not competitive. So, therefore, you were good. You were Minnesota 9-3. And I think there is a notable difference there. A Minnesota 9-3 and maybe the Glenn Mason years or a couple of the PJ Fleck, you looked at that record and said, how the heck did they get that? And they did because they beat the teams they should, but no one was actually impressed by them. And they weren't really a top 25 team. So people just didn't give them maybe the respect they deserve, but that's how it is. I think from our perspective, after what was a very eventful 2024, with a few marquee wins scattered throughout there, wins that are memorable all-time days there, this year we're still, I guess, searching for that marquee game. Now, to me, the USC game was as meaningful as anyone at home. That was such a fun day. But the problem is, and I understand this for fans, that was coming after the Indiana debacle, so they just didn't have as much juice as they would have liked. So in a weird way, yes, Anthony, the 9-3 wouldn't feel as sweet as last year. But here's the thing. Then we'd wake up in mid-December getting ready for the Music City Bowl and say, oh, that's a pretty good record right there. 9-3. Wow. Yeah. Okay, we're fine. We're fine, man. Like, not a college football playoff, but we still got a good head coach. And, oh, look at the news. They're making defensive changes. Okay, he knows what's up. We're going to onward and upward we go. There's still good to be had from this, Anthony, but the sting you might feel at the moment does make sense. From Cookie, I'll be happy with 8-4 5 years ago. I would have said a 9-3 season followed by 8-4 was impossible. Oh, yeah, I see what you're saying, Cookie. So, yeah, when Bret Bielema came here, you say 8 wins, you're in. I get that now. I think, Cookie, 8-4, I'm not going to be angry about. But what would happen is losing any of these 4 games, you're going to say, guys, It's one thing to lose to ranked quality teams, even though somehow Washington's not ranked. I don't get that. It's one thing to lose to ranked quality teams. It's another to lose to bottom third of the Big Ten teams. Every one of these teams is bottom third. And I don't want to hear it about Northwestern. I know they're 5-3 and have the same record as you. They were a bottom third Big Ten team. I will not be convinced otherwise. I'm not upsetting any Northwestern fans because the 2,200 of them that actually exist aren't listening to this podcast. Okay? So you're playing bottom third of the Big Ten teams. If you are upper echelon, or I should say in the B tier, you can still, and maybe not in the most forceful way, kind of prove that by just beating the ones you should. All right, couple more here. Also from Cookie. If Illinois loses this weekend due to the defense, what happens? I think Aaron Henry's gone. I think Monday you don't hear from Aaron Henry. How could you? Even for his sake, if they lose, don't send him out there again. Just, Aaron, hey, love you, man. I'm sorry it didn't work out. For the rest of this year, I got to take over the reins. I'm going to give it to Archie McDaniel or something like that. It's business. Sorry. There is a personal cost to it. That is unfortunate, but it's not amateur athletics anymore. It's not. Do you feel that bad when an assistant coach gets fired in the NBA or NFL? Probably not. It's business. And if that happens, Cookie, I think you would probably see that. Anthony predicts they're going 9-3. I hope you're right. From Seth, if I'm Bret, I'd make a call to Jim Leonard to see if he'd be interested in DC. He had a 4-3 record as an interim head coach, and he has a defensive mind. Well, he was down here. Now, maybe Jim Leonard didn't want to take a D-coordinating position because he had other designs. And what is Jim Leonard doing right now? Let's see. Leonard. Where is he at? Jim Leonard is in the NFL as a defensive pass game coordinator for the Denver Broncos. Assistant head coach, defensive pass game coordinator. Here's the thing. When you get a taste of the NFL, I don't think there's any going back. If he's got an assistant head coach thing, that's a guy with designs on being a D coordinator at some point and then maybe a head coach at some point. And I'm not going to be the one to say he can't because the guy was a phenomenal D coordinator at Wisconsin. So, yeah, I don't want to say pipe dream. But Seth, I would be surprised if that's the case. But here's the thing. There's plenty of good options out there. I don't have a list at the moment, so maybe that's foolish of me to say, but we know that Bielema has a Rolodex. We know that we have money behind this program. It's a Big Ten school with donors taking it serious that you are Michigan or Ohio State, and I'm okay with that. You aren't Penn State in terms of money, but you are in Indiana because they have a unicorn of a coach, and that's just what it is. But you can be in that B tier consistently. So I think there's going to be options, and I'll be interested to see what they are. And I'll be excited too, because I would guarantee, Seth, every hire after a firing is sort of a reaction to what went wrong. Whoever would come in, I would be shocked if they were not experienced as a D coordinator and didn't have quite the sheet of you've been here, here, and there. So we shall see. I mean, Ryan Walters was a D coordinator at Missouri. Oddly enough, it didn't go that great down there. He was fine, but he had the great defenses, especially his second year here. So obviously, when you have a bunch of Pro Bowlers, I think Ryan Walters at the end of the day is probably a good coordinator. And he had a very aggressive Washington defense, but without that elite talent, he's probably just a good coordinator. You know what? I'd take that. I would take good. And no Ryan Walters, of the way everything ended, is probably not coming back, and that's okay. But there's a bunch of dudes out there, and they are better options than what you currently have. In the meantime, beat Rutgers. I think they will. You'll get bowl eligible. It still counts for something. I know not as much, but come on. Illinois football fans, we've been in so many dark Novembers where bowl eligibility was off the table before the month even started. You're in a position, I'm kind of hoping this is like the Ball State game in 2007, where, hey, you won. Oh, shoot, we're 6-3, bowl eligible. Let's have a drink. That is what I hope Saturday is like. Is it going to be the biggest party ever? No. Is it going to be the best game ever? Probably not. Are we going to get driven absolutely batty by some silly defensive plays? Probably so. But a win is a win is a win. These are all winnable games. So go win them. I don't care if it's by a point or by 20. But show that despite the defensive regression, Bret Bielema, this is year 5 of your program, and you got enough dudes to make it work and beat the ones you should. All right, before I get out of here, everybody, Got to remind you, the best way to support us is to support our sponsors. So Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign, steak, seafood, and spirits for date night, for a pre or post game meal. So after the game on Saturday, I mean, it's going to be a nice fall Saturday in town. You go there about 5 o'clock when your tailgate's wrapped up. Get yourself an old fashioned. Again, I cannot tell you enough how good those are. And bone-in steak, family style sides, maybe steak fries, especially if you've been out in the cold. Nothing better than a good steak dinner after a chilly day at Memorial Stadium. That's Hamilton Walkers in downtown Champaign. State Farm agent Brian Hansen, online at brianismyguy.com. Life, auto, home, business, renters, you name it. Brian is my guy, and he can be your guy as well at brianismyguy.com. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing, your home's best friend. Give them a call at 217-841-4728. Join their maintenance program. We are furnace and AC checkups, and that includes no overtime and weekend fees and guaranteed same-day service. Dogtown Heating, Air, and Plumbing. Finally, Owen Builders LLC. I'm on at owenbuildersllc.com for your next home improvement project. Check out a gallery of their work online at owenbuildersllc.com. All right, everybody. Got to thank all of you for tuning in on this Wednesday afternoon. Before you go, if you could like, subscribe, follow, whatever you have on whatever streaming service you're watching us. And for those listening at home, same thing. Follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Maybe give us a review. We haven't really pushed for that lately, but a 5-star, 1-star if you just hate listen. It's all good. In the meantime, have a great rest of your week. Hopefully we get done what we need to on Saturday by any means necessary. Get the W, get to the bye week, figure things out for the last 3, and let's still have a good season. It's still there for them, and doggone it, it doesn't feel great right now, but it can feel good again. I think it will. I do. Crazy me. I've been wrong before, but I'm an optimist at heart. And are you rolling your eyes at that? You're probably saying bull crap, Carp. No, you aren't. I am. And I think there's enough on the offensive side of the ball to somehow carry you through this rough stretch. All right, everybody. Enjoy the tailgate on what should be a beautiful fall Saturday. We're debuting our tailgate rig, so really excited for that. And it's going to be a heck of a day. Just get the win and make it a very memorable one. And we will talk to you on Sunday. It is the 200 level.